Ladies and gentlemen, ATDF everything in that shelf presentation. You're now rocking with TDF everything. Spoiled rotten.
Spoiler alert.
Welcome back, everybody.
Hey.
It's me, Daniel,
And Ben
on Spoiled Rotten.
on that shelf.
Boom. Great.
Yep.
And today we're doing Blade 2.
We're doing Blade 2.
What an interesting film.
Interesting is definitely the right way to put it. I remember this movie very differently than what I saw last night.
Oh, I was well aware that, like, I can say this now that I own it, but, like, I remember this was one of the first movies I downloaded on my own, like, when I was like, all right, I'm confident enough I know how to, like, download a movie. It was Blade 2. And I think my only memory of it was, it's the one with Ron Perlman, and they've got that weird, like, ninja fight in the dark.
Yep.
That was my lasting memory of the movie. Also, that Whistler dies again, but as you stated last time we talked about Blade, no, he doesn't die in this.
Yep.
Which was a nice change, because I was like, wait, does he die in every single one of these?
Mm-hmm.
No. So this movie, actually, one thing that I liked right away was that it was like, that post-credit scene they did at the end where he's, like, in Russia is him looking for Whistler.
Yeah.
I was like, okay, so, like, we're actually just, like, following that thread. Like,
I really like that, actually.
So yeah, the movie starts with Blade being like, I have to find my best friend Whistler, and then he does, and they realize there's this new thing called a Reaper that is trying to kill vampires, and this, like, vampire royalty enlists Blade to work with Ron Perlman and the Blood Pack to get rid of the Reapers, and there's double crosses aplenty.
Yeah.
Or maybe just two. Either way, interesting movie. And it's got your boy Donnie Yen that you don't like.
Yeah, well, I mean, to be fair,
you don't like his American cinema stuff.
Yes.
You have said that. Although you do like Rogue One.
I do like Rogue One.
He is good in Rogue One.
He's good in Rogue One. I don't like his American cinema stuff. And
this one's good though. He doesn't even talk. Like,
and that's a part of the conflicting thing too. It's just like for the longest time, because I guess his English wasn't up to par or anything, but his action scenes definitely were, that they were like, okay, we like this aspect of you, we're going to do this and all that kind of stuff. And of course, with current race issues now,
it sucks that he doesn't talk.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. It's just one of those things now where I'm like, okay, I can't not see this. Just kind of like in like Modern Family, where I'm like, I can't not see how they treat Lily. Sometimes, it's one of those things.
It is. I mean, who knows who's in the writer's room at Modern Family. I always see it as they're showing how like tone deaf her parents are. I'm hoping that's what they're trying to do. And realistically, there's no one in their circle to correct it. But I mean, how far does that go? But the point is that I was just trying to make was Donnie Yen was actually the fight coordinator. So I think him being on screen was kind of like extra money. I would like it if he talked, but I can also see him being like, I'm already getting paid for the fight coordination, and now I can probably get paid to be like an actor in the, like, a character in the movie.
Right.
So that part is a win for him, but I still understand your point. And I agree with your point that in hindsight, it sucks that he didn't talk, because there were characters that just didn't speak English, so he could have also just not spoken English.
Right, and to be fair, not everyone in the Blood Pack talk too. Like that's a key essential thing. Like
I'm pretty sure everyone does have at least one line.
Like, well, actually, yeah, that's right. They weren't in English. That was the thing.
No, that's what I was saying. Not everyone speaks in English in the Blood Pack, so he could have also been someone who just didn't speak English.
Yeah, he could have said something like in Chinese or something like that.
Yeah, and one of the guys could have been like, yeah, he said this or whatever. But like,
yeah, because like we talked about this the first time around, like the inclusion of the Asian kind of fighters in the first one, in that final fight scene, it didn't really make a lot of sense in many regards to me. unless they were just hired in or whatever, or unless there was an Asian vampire family there too. So it's
which I
kind of
think
just
there
like,
was at the table
yeah, I can't really
with that
remember.
round tables. I mean, it's not literally a round table, but the concept of a round table sequence.
Correct. Yeah.
I believe there was, for lack of a better term, an Asian family there.
Asian representation there, I
Yes.
guess, but not from a vocal standpoint.
No.
But either way, so in this movie, done by Guillermo del Toro and written by, again, David S. Goyer, who wrote the first one, was released in 2002. And the production companies were kind of interesting to me on this one. Like, I've never heard of Amin Ra films before.
Oh, they did the first one.
Did they?
Amin Ra, I think, does. Well, I would imagine when we're not doing Blade 3, so who knows? But I'm sure they did that one too. I haven't heard about, but like that just goes to like foreign backing, I'm sure.
Yeah. Oh, I see.
Like that, like how you'll see, like I just watched Bad Moms 2, and it was part of 2 or Bad Moms 1 as well, but like they had a Hong Kong backer, so it was like the H Brothers or Alibaba Films or something like that. Like it's just, yeah, it's not American money.
Oh, I see. That's where that's coming. Okay, because I was like, that seems a bit odd, because I thought this was purely American made, but I mean that would make sense.
I get the sense they didn't step foot in America for this movie.
Yeah, I get that sense too.
But I mean, obviously it's Marvel, so there is. I mean, they weren't a production company back then, but they still had owned the rights. So yes, there is some kind of anchor.
Well,
but
actually, the funny thing is, in the Wikipedia, it says Marvel Enterprises was the production company, and I think that was before they.
I'm sure they get producer credit because some money was put in, but yeah, I think another interesting thing about this movie is he just wasn't available for it, like Wesley Snipes.
Yeah,
he wanted to do it. It seems like the producers, let me look this up so I don't get it wrong. There was a producer in particular that was like, no, like we need Wesley to do it again. And so he fitted in, because I think it said he was in 3 other movies in 2002. So that he probably just had this crazy schedule.
Right.
But it was like, I think I saw what kind of happened in the next movie. I want to say it's Peter Frankfurt was like, no, like we're not doing it without Wesley. And it seemed like Peter and Guillermo del Toro both were like, no, this guy just knows Blade. And I think one of the quotes was even, he knows him better than David S. Goyer. And I can see how Blade 3 kind of turned out the way it did, if that's what's being said in the press release. So I could see David be like, nope, no, he doesn't. Here I go. So yeah, they really liked his take on Blade, and Guillermo del Toro was saying like, oh, like anytime he changed something, it just made something better. Like it was great. But I did find it very interesting that IMDb only lists 2 scenes, but like because they didn't have him for the whole shoot, there's just scenes where they had to get another actor. And like it's only because I was looking for it. So there's that scene after they do the autopsy on the Reaper. And Nisa learns like all this stuff, like, oh, they've got bones around their heart, this is like the adrenal gland or whatever. What Blade's mean to everybody, so she goes upstairs to talk to him. That's just a different actor. And I'm like, if you look at it, you're like, wait, what's wrong with Wesley Snipes' face? And then you realize, oh, they just didn't have him that day, so they just needed to film with another guy.
Yeah,
there's another one where they're in like a helicopter or something like that, I think was the other one.
I saw that a lot, and it was just like, oh, okay, this. Like there were scenes where he was like, "Oh, that's not a stunt scene. This is a stunt double standing in for him. What the hell's going on?"
No, it's not a stunt double. They had a stunt double and they hired another actor to look like.
Oh, really? Oh, wow. Okay, yes. I didn't know that. Yeah. That's crazy.
But yeah, and I think another thing I remember about this movie was that they cut to CGI at weird times.
Yes, they did
during fights. But this time it didn't really bother me, because I think I just already had it built up in my head that like that's what's going to happen.
Yeah.
So I wasn't like as put off by it. But I remember when I was younger, I was kind of like, oh, that's weird. That's a weird choice.
Yeah.
You don't necessarily.
I think I remember the exact scene that you're talking about, and that's the one where the first 2 blood pack people.
Yes, Nisa and I always thought it was her brother, but it's obviously not her brother.
Yeah. Anyways, they fight, and that's a cool fight scene itself, but then it cuts to CGI at the weirdest times, and then it's like directly in front of that like light wall that they have to kind of hide the CGI. But it like, I mean, you take it for what it is. It was 2002 kind of visual effects,
I took it as like they were like testing things out.
Yeah.
I mean, testing might not be the right word, but I took it as like, oh, they're trying to see like what they can get away with. I didn't take it as like, oh, like we don't have confidence in our fight choreography, because like they had Donnie and I think they had 3 other fight coordinators just for different types of combat.
Mm-hmm.
And so I feel like they probably were just like, wouldn't it be cool if we could do this? Because like it'll be like he'll do half a flip and then a quarter of it is CGI, and then he lands for the last quarter in real life. And I'm like, yeah, that just seems like you're trying things out. I don't even know if you're like,
I think it
worried
was like
about something.
It was something that was like super weird, because to what you said is like, okay, well, you can tell when they've used like a real footage and then they took over with CGI at some point to do the weird flip to get extra height or something like that. It's just a really weird process. And I'm not sure if they were trying to get away with anything. Like,
that's what I'm saying. I don't think they were trying to get away with it. I thought they were just like, it would be cool if we did this. And then probably people were like, nope.
Because well, I get where they were coming from the perspective, and that's probably where in 2002 I would have taken those kind of CGI effects. It's like, okay, well, you take your regular footage and then you just blend it in with this kind of stuff, and then that would be how it is, as opposed to like nowadays where CGI is like, oh wait, you mean there was CGI? You mean he didn't have a mustache?
right.
You know what I mean? So it's very, very weird, and I think that's the one scene that stands out to me the most.
I think every time he does like a flip, they cut to CGI. Like there's that one where he's like fighting the 2 motorcycle people.
Yeah.
And like it's just like,
there was a weird
effect. As a kid, I was like, oh, like CGI.
So there was a weird effect in that fight too that I noticed, but that was more along the lines of like, oh, cool, this is him using his vampire skills. That wasn't too weird to me, right? Versus like the fight there in the
fight is the biggest one. I feel like it would stick out to anybody because the good thing about Wesley Snipes is he can actually do the fight choreography.
Yep.
So
I love watching his fight scenes. They're awesome.
So it is weird anytime they like don't use him. But I think we both on the same page that it's kind of like, I think they just wanted to do that. I don't think they were like, oh, we got to cut corners.
Yeah, because I think at that point in time, they were like, they're really starting to understand what CGI could do for the comic book world and all that kind of stuff, right? And with a bigger, like this, the budget here is roughly the same. I think the budget for last time was around 50 million. This is 54 again.
Okay, that makes sense.
To me, it's just like, well, how much money could they throw at it, right?
Yeah. Well, I mean, they don't have a huge cast. Like,
no, they don't.
I mean, Norman Reedus is a nobody at that time. It's like I don't mean to be insulting, but like I was like, wait, is that Daryl? Like, I can't tell. Like, and then I'm like, oh, it is. It definitely is by a certain point. And then is it Chris Christopherson? Yeah. Whistler's Chris Christopherson, and then in addition to Wesley Snipes. And then I don't think there's any, like, I feel like Ron Perlman is like a guy you can bring in for not a lot of money, especially since he's Guillermo del Toro's boy. Like, that's like his guy. I know this is only the second movie they did together, but like, it's clear they're like, that's like his guy.
Yeah, I would agree. It's one of those things where it kind of like when you see Michael Caine in a Nolan movie, you're just kind of like,
you're like, of course he is. Yeah,
you're doing that. You're doing that for a friend, but you're also getting paid. So I don't know how much you're getting paid. Like, I don't know if you're doing a Christian Bale kind of situation where you're like.
I would say the difference is Michael Caine is a draw. You don't. Correct. It's not like, whereas Ron Perlman is mostly known for being under prosthetics. I would say, or like not playing a entirely human character. I mean, I guess he is playing a vampire here, but like I would say this is a performance that's way less prosthetics and stuff than other things I know him from.
Yeah, I would say like Perlman's a recognized name, but not a draw. Kind of like how Andy Serkis
he's definitely a face. Like I feel like if someone saw us with, like, oh yeah, I know this guy.
Yeah, but what I'm saying is I don't think people that would be like, oh, do you want to watch Blade 2 for Ron Perlman's in this one? We got to go. Like that's the kind of thing, right? I would be like, Wesley Snipes is in this, and then the rest are B-list compared to him at that point in time.
Yes, at
now
this point,
it's a little bit different. Yeah.
But I feel like
Norman
everyone
Reedus,
just
I
caught
think,
up.
was
I don't
C-list.
know if everyone. I don't know if it's like switched, but I feel like everyone is, if not caught up, just at the same level now.
Yeah,
there is no.
They're probably at the same level because I'm looking through Norman Reedus's IMDb. At around 2002, he didn't really do much
Because
more
when's
that
Boondock
I
Saints?
remember. Boondocks, because that was 1999, so that would have been before. And then 8mm was decently well known, I think.
Yeah, but I didn't even remember he was in that.
Yeah. So he was like getting established, and then now because of The Walking Dead, he's like,
now
people
he's
know him.
Now you know Norman Reedus. But one thing I loved throughout the whole movie was how much Wesley Snipes and Ron Perlman don't like each other.
Yes.
When he's doing that, like flipping the steak thing and slapping him, I'm like, this is amazing. I would watch 3 straight minutes of this. I
love that scene. I love that scene
it's
so much.
Funny.
Yeah, because he was like, listen, you've hated me your whole life. You wanted to kill me. Here's your opportunity. And he just kept fucking with him and all that kind of stuff. It was really good. I loved it so much.
And I do like that Ron Perlman like pushes back at times. It's just like, I love that tension. And I couldn't remember to a certain point. I'm like, wait, I'm pretty sure he turns on him, but I can't remember. And then he does. I'm like, oh, okay, good. I did remember
Perlman
that. Perlman.
Snipes?
Well, like Blade was never on board with him. So
no,
Perlman.
Yeah, because he was always like, listen, they're going to try to screw us over the first chance.
He's like, they're going to fuck us the first chance.
Yeah, absolutely.
I was surprised that he did know about the Norman Reedus or Scud thing. It was like, oh, okay. Like, it didn't make me be like, that's not true. I was like, I mean, I believe that in this movie, Blade is like, I don't trust anyone but Whistler. So like, anyone is game for like screwing me over. And there is an IMDb trivia point that's like, especially when Blade is talking to Whistler, and he says, keep your friends close and your enemies closer. It is framed to show that Scud is physically closer to Blade than Whistler is. Trying to like do some foreshadowing that Scud's going to screw him over. Also, I don't know this character, but apparently Scud is a Marvel character, Scud the disposable assassin.
Oh, I didn't realize that.
This movie, I feel like, has a lot more Marvel Easter eggs than, and by that I mean I can list 3. Well, other than the fact that like they had to change it before shooting, but the idea was just like how the last movie has the Morbius post credit, that the Reaper was just going to be Morbius. That was going to be the villain of this movie. I think Marvel smartly was like, no, because then you're making him just straight up the bad guy. And I get that Morbius is supposed to be more of a anti-hero and less of just a straight up villain that gets killed.
Correct. And I think like from a logistics standpoint too, they were like, yo, we're releasing Spider-Man pretty soon. So I'm pretty sure it was in development at that point already. So it's just like, you can't introduce a Spider-Man Blade like crossover villain before Spider-Man's even established, because like I'm pretty sure
I don't think they cared about that kind of stuff.
Yeah, or keeping their cards open. You don't think that?
I think they were just like, we just want to do like Morbius movies the same way we're doing Blade movies. I don't think they were like, oh, we want to save him for a Spider-Man villain, because I don't think they were looking at it like that. Like, I think this is just like, how many franchises can we have?
Right. The other thing too we can think about too is like back then who held the rights to Morbius, because it was arguably Sony Pictures had the rights to Morbius at that point, right? And arguably,
well, it just said Marvel said no, so it didn't say Sony said no. So maybe they didn't. I mean, right now it looks like Sony has the rights to every single thing that's Spider-Man, but maybe there is some kind of like gray area,
because that's where I was thinking that was the biggest thing, was like I get my assumption was Sony still had the rights to Spider-Man at that point, because we know that like in the the 90s to early 2000s, Marvel movies didn't do as well that they did, and like they had a little bit of a sell-off kind of thing to kind of keep Marvel Studios afloat. That was so that's what I was thinking.
The other thing was that when they're fighting in like, I guess that place called the House of Pain, like that first rave type place they go to, and then they're like the main Reaper, I don't remember his name,
Yeah, I can't remember his name either.
I'll look it up. But Blade and the main villain are fighting, and apparently I couldn't find it, and I was looking for it. Something on the stained glass windows looks exactly like the Eye of Agamotto because Guillermo del Toro loves Doctor Strange so much and
That's
wanted
so cool.
to do a Doctor Strange movie.
That'd be cool.
And again, I think smartly they were like, no, we'll keep him for the MCU. Yeah. Not that that's what they were thinking at the time. They were just like, no.
Yeah, but also too, like I wasn't. Would you think audiences would have been open open to the Doctor Strange movie back in like the early 2000s?
Yeah, they would watch whatever. Yep. Nomak is the main guy.
No, okay, that's his name.
Yeah, Nomak. Yeah, I mean, they did Constantine. I feel like you could do Doctor Strange.
I keep forgetting that's.
I didn't like Constantine, but I feel like we're going to be doing it. People really like it, so it'll be nice to revisit it. Right. It's just, I think people would have watched whatever. Like, if they're, and I'm not saying it would have been a successful movie, but like there would have been an audience for it.
Correct. That's definitely true. There would have been an audience for it.
But yeah, so, and I think Guillermo del Toro, because it says years later he asked to do it. So like, if like, again, people went to go see Hellboy. It did well enough to get a sequel. So I feel like at that point, if he was asking to do it after Hellboy, people would be like, "Oh, it's Guillermo del Toro. I'll go see it." Like in terms of comic book fans, in addition to his fan base, which he would rightfully have. Like I'm not saying he has nothing if he doesn't have Hellboy. I'm just saying like there would have been like a buildup of like he did Blade 2, he did Hellboy, and I'll go watch his Doctor Strange movie. But yeah, I don't know what it is, but this movie I was just kind of like, like it's got some interesting ideas, but it didn't really come together for me the way the first Blade did.
Yeah, that's one of the things for me too, is I find myself remembering this movie a lot more fondly than actually what I enjoyed from watching. Like when I watched it, I was like, I don't remember enjoying this part. It is very incohesive, and the like not knowing that Wesley Snipes was not available. I'm like, why does he look weird? Like I'm like, oh, that's just a straight up different actor now. It takes me away from this. It's not as cohesive. Because Del Toro, like the thing is, I'm reading some of the Wikipedia. He chose not to do too much, but he wanted to have a Japanese animation feel along with the comic book side of things, and so that's where
what
to
the
me,
CGI stuff is for.
That's what I think.
That movement.
And that's where it really did feel like Japanese kind of like fight style scenes and like the anime kind of stuff, which is like cool, but I don't think it fit in here very, very well, and that's where it kind of like was a bit weird to me.
Yeah, I know. I mean, I guess for me, this has been a theme throughout this whole thing, is how well the like main villain and the hero are connected. Like, and for me, if I even care by the time they fight, which I didn't at this point, because I'm like, but he already like fought Ron Perlman, who I feel like is the real bad guy of the movie. Like, Ron, like I'm not gonna look up his name. It looks too long. Like basically, the Blood Pack and Scud is enough.
Yes,
I feel like. But if you really are leaning into, but also Nomak really is the bad guy, because like what I feel like is like maybe when it was Morbius, they wrote it so that it was like, but then Morbius and Blade get rid of the Blood Pack together,
right?
And then you save Morbius to be like been this recurring character.
So you think? So you think what's his face? The
Nomak character.
Nomak is like the Jared Nomak. You think he was the stand-in for Morbius?
No, I know he was. That was going to be Morbius. That character was going to be Morbius. Yeah, because that was the next evolution of vampire. And I'm sure they went back and like rewrote it. So it was like, no, well, because we can't do Morbius, it's going to be like this, this, and this. But like,
this movie makes sense with Morbius in it. It would totally make sense.
Yeah, but like when you switch it, I'm like, I don't care now. Like he's already beat up he's already beat the people that I like was engaging with the whole movie. You kind of sideline Nomak for most of the movie because it's looking for him. And then like so then I don't really care. Like I care when they like fight the other Reapers,
Yep.
But like I don't know who they are. It doesn't matter to me other than like it's cool to watch them have to defeat them.
Right.
And then like the real conflict is resolved when it's like, yeah, all you people wanted to screw me over. This was just one big ruse to get me and kill me.
Yeah. No,
and then I'm like,
it wasn't. Well, it was like, oh, I'm gonna use you and then get you and kill you. So it was like, oh, you're gonna do the dirty work and then like.
Yeah. Well, that I mean, okay, sure. But then he was like, so then he gets like revenge on them or whatever, and then but then the movie still wants me to care that he has to defeat Nomak, and I'm like, I don't know, like.
Yeah, at that
Nomak
point in time, I'm like, the Nomak is not the final fight.
Yeah.
To me, that was the weirdest decision. I'm like, what? I'm like, that wasn't like, I get how you have to have some of the hybrid new guys take out some of the blood pack by itself, but that was already effectively done. And then the biggest threat would have been the guy with the weird like mullet mohawk. That was basically like Ron Perlman's go-to guy.
Right.
You know what I mean? It would have been between those two. Like that fight would have been crazy, as well as maybe Nisa being invited in, because Nisa would have been, at that point, had that love connection, would have made it a very, very interesting kind of thing, right?
Does she die at the end? Does he take her out to the sun?
Yeah, because she gets bit, and then Blade's like, okay, I'm going to take you out into the sun and watch the sunrise before you turn into a Reaper.
Yeah, I feel like she kind of got lost in it. And also, same with the guy that like, or did he just die? I guess he just died.
Which
the guy that showed up to the place with her when they're doing that like lights fight.
Oh yeah, I'm pretty sure he's dead.
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't remember his death scene, but I'm pretty sure he's dead.
I feel like maybe he got caught in like the water with the Reapers or something like that.
Oh yes, he did.
My memory is him getting covered by Reapers.
Yeah, he was caught in. It was in that scene where they were in the water, and the Reapers just kind of like jumped on top of them.
Yeah, I think it didn't matter to me by the end, so I was just like, oh, like. Yeah. To me, the movie is that like this guy who didn't ask to be born, and like,
yes,
I think they even say like there's nothing he can do about it. He needs to feed, like he's got to do it.
Yeah.
And then he was like, again, they obviously give him lines to make him seem like the villain, but I'm like, I don't really see, because like even he says like, since you're the enemy of my enemy does not make you my friend. Mm-hmm. But then like the next line is like, or my enemy, and I'm like, oh. No, I think you got it right the first time. Like you guys are on the same side of like get rid of these vampires.
Yeah.
And then like I know that Blade isn't that type of character, but like it is like a matter of him getting the Reaper to be like, I guess you just have to kill him is really realistically the way they've written that character, because he has that hunger, there's nothing that's going to be done.
There's no other ending for that.
He needs to die, but like it's just maybe it needed to be more like a Nisa death than it was a battle to the death.
Right. And this
it needed to be like he's like, look, there's nothing that can be done. Like everything is a lie. I don't even want to be doing this. And Blade is like, all right, like I'll take you out to the sun or whatever.
Yeah. So to me, like I thought about like what would have been better if it actually was Morbius as the guy, and it would have been cool, because at that point it would have been, I would have expected some sort of like Blade's like, hey, here's how I control my hunger, and it's like maybe we can do something for you too, and like because like that's what Morbius kind of does in the comics. Like he basically develops side plasma or whatever safe that he can consume because he's so disgusted with himself, right? So like for him to do that and join together would have been cool, and that would have been a cool movie, because at that point it would have been Blade and Morbius against the Blood Pack, and the Blood Pack would have been arguably a bigger, more important thing. And then maybe even Morbius fighting against the Reapers too. Like that would.
Well, yeah, that is what I envisioned, is that like he's created this army as well.
Yeah.
But then they both need to take out, and I wouldn't do it like they become friends necessarily. It's just
it's
that recognition of like, well, out of necessity, yeah, we're both trying to fight the same enemy.
Yeah, and it would be more like it wouldn't be friends. It would be like, oh, okay, we have this common goal.
Yeah.
And I can trust you now, kind of deal. Let's do it, but we don't like each other.
Yeah, they're gonna go their separate ways.
Exactly. Yeah. Toward the end of this, I would have expected them to go separate ways, and then Morbius have his own movie, his own franchise, Blade popping in every now and then. That would be cool. I would have liked that. But of course, they didn't get the Morbius thing, and that's why we didn't care about the final fight scene. It's just like your only goal is to kill him at this point, and because of the light thing, like it's at that point they've done this. What I did appreciate was like, okay, with the autopsy scenes, like what is different about these Reapers, what like all these kind of things, and that was really, really cool. I really enjoyed that, especially with like the effects that they had with like, oh no, it's still hungry, it dropped a little bit of blood and the whole thing started going crazy. Like I really enjoyed that. That was really, really cool. But then how afterwards basically none of the blood pack changed anything about what they did. That was just like, no, we're still going to shoot them with bullets that were not effective whatsoever, instead of using the light and all that kind of stuff. But
well, I think they did have that line of dialogue where Whistler is shining the light, and he's like, "We're only trying to draw them in, not actually scare them off." Because I guess they're trying to double cross them anyway. But it made sense to me that it's like if you just keep shining the light, they're just going to run away, and you're not going to get them. You need to draw them in.
Right. Well, and they also had that line of like, okay, well, we need something to kill them that's not lethal to us too, right?
Yes,
so they can't exactly go around like.
So they can't just be shooting the light because you might hit someone in the crossfire.
Yeah.
Yes, they did actually say we need something that's not lethal to us. Yeah. So I
and something that they changed this. Yeah.
I get that they didn't do anything different, but also like that would be the most American part of the movie is that like in American movies you just shoot guns. That's just kind of what happens. But they did give me enough to go on to be like, well, they're kind of out of options as well. Like they can't really just be shooting the light all the time.
Right. Whereas like when they and this was the thing too, when they were like, okay, put on your BDSM costumes to block the light and all that kind of stuff. They changed something where in the first one, like they had the motorcycle suits, like with Steven Dorff and all that kind of stuff. They had the motorcycle helmets, and they were able to be outside in the light and still be able to block that. In this one, Ron Perlman just kind of like, oh, I'm going to touch it even with I'm fully clothed and all that kind of stuff, and it still burns me. So they changed that a little bit in this one. Did you notice? So that was a little bit odd.
Not until you mentioned it, but yeah.
But yeah, that was a bit odd because my thought was, okay, because I forgot so much of this movie. When I watched them, okay, get in your light suits, I thought the goal was, okay, well, if they're in their light suits and they're safe, as evidenced by that first scene with that huge light wall and that huge ninja fight scene, then to me, it would have been a very, very easy thing of let's draw them into one spot and then Blade throws the light bomb and then they're all safe. Because even Nessa, when she was under the water, the light didn't get her.
Yeah.
So it was like this really weird inconsistency with the light and how it affects the vampires and this blood pack.
Yes, it is inconsistent, but also what you're describing is them in good faith trying to get rid of these Reapers, which isn't what they're trying to do. They're just trying to draw Blade into a trap. But you're right about everything else. Everything
I know
else
that, but then like obviously after having done that, then that's where the double cross would have happened, right? So
well, no, because they were planning on the Reapers taking out Blade. So
taking
out all the Reapers wouldn't be
they were
part of the plan.
willing to let the Reapers do the dirty work and then them clean up after the Reapers.
Yeah. So yeah, but you are right. Like it can't get her under the water. It can get him through his clothing. Like it is weird to like. I mean, other than just they needed Nisa to not die at that time.
Right. That would have been the only thing, but yeah, it's weird because when they were in their BDSM suits and all that kind of stuff, then I was just weirded out by I'm like, why aren't they putting on the mask side of things? I mean, like, why would you bother getting into that suit and not put on the mask side of things if you know you're using a light bomb to basically kill them all? It was just a really weird final thing that didn't make a lot of sense to me. It's kind of like when you watch that war episode of like Game of Thrones where you're like, why would you send your horses in front of your the arrows? Like that doesn't make sense at all. like from a battle standpoint, strategy standpoint. So it's just one of those things where I'm like, that caught me off guard here. I'm like, that doesn't make sense. It's weird.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's kind of where we landed on this movie. Is I like the main idea of like there is something that's different and has scared the vampires, even though we realize it's more just like they're trying to draw a blade out.
Mm-hmm.
But that initial thing is interesting. I do like the relationship between Scud, Whistler, and Blade, like just how they're all feeling each other. Well, Blade seems to kind of just be enjoying the show of Whistler and Scud feeling each other out.
Yes, he does. He's like, hey, you two idiots, fight it out. I don't care.
And I think one thing I also appreciated is that Wesley Snipes brought back like some of that childish stuff for Blade, like that scene where he's on the Ducati and he like pulls up against the car and looks at his reflection and kisses his reflection. He's kind of like, or like,
oh yeah, when he's like, the motor, yeah, when he's like, he doesn't damage his own car. It's like, I love you, baby. I was like, that was funny to me.
And then he's like, when Ron Perlman thinks he's got him with the like laser beam, and like I think it's Chupa like taps Ron Perlman. He's like, he's got you too, man. And like Blade just gives this weird ass smile back to him.
Yeah,
I like it a lot. All of that stuff is interesting to me. Like just the kind of like I classify it as sort of like childish because he hasn't really had a chance to become an adult. He just is doing what he's doing.
Yep.
So all of that is interesting to me, but it didn't really flow the way the other one did. I think what it was missing, well, one, I guess, yeah, why would he bring that doctor along with him? But it would have been nice to like have her, I guess, just to see that he like can keep a relationship.
Yeah.
And I don't mean sexually, just like they went through something. Like it would have made sense if she was also like working on stuff with him.
Right. And like the only thing that made sense to me was like, oh, okay, this doctor doesn't want to travel to find Whistler, but then they kind of come back home and then they're like,
it's more when he's back home that I would have.
It was the idea of like, I really wish they would have addressed it as opposed to ignored it altogether. Because they just like
when it comes to stuff like that, I would rather, if she's not going to show up, I don't really care to hear about it. Like I don't like when it's like, I kind of just like she's not here. It would be awkward to be like, it's been 2 years, but like let's bring that up again.
Right, because this like I always think of like what Marvel, the MCU did very, very successfully to kind of do these things, and like when you don't see Pepper in Civil War, and then you find out, oh, we're going through a rough patch right now.
But like that is a plot point. Like it's
a plot point. Yes,
that is like that's part of isolating Tony Stark. Like he
that's
doesn't
correct.
have Pepper Pot, and he's gonna lose his other family.
Yes,
and we're also as an audience watching him lose his parents. So it's all about taking all this stuff away from Tony.
Correct.
Whereas like this movie isn't interested in that. Like that's this isn't the point of the movie. It's him going to get Whistler. He gets Whistler, and now he's caught up in this other thing.
Right, because he never really cared about establishing a family or having anything normal. He cared about just killing vampires, and that was it.
Yeah,
and Whistler.
And he has the person he cares about. Like,
correct.
He cares about Whistler, and Whistler's there.
And the funny thing is, like, I forgot that they were like, they basically like addressed the Whistler thing is the weirdest thing ever. All right, because I remember watching this movie and them adding a small scene where they show that Whistler didn't shoot himself, he shot someone else or something like that, and then he like was able to survive through the whole thing, because I completely forgot that they turned him into a vampire.
Right.
And you know, and that.
But does that scene happen? Because I don't remember seeing that.
What's that?
Does that scene happen? I don't remember seeing that he shot someone else. I just see that you hear the shot, and then
you just
Wesley
hear the
Snipes
shot.
is
like,
walking.
I thought that for some reason, I don't know why, I remembered them shooting a scene where they like inserting a scene within that kind of Blade 1 kind of montage that they did, explaining where he went. I thought that they did. And I don't know where that came from.
Yeah, I mean,
they just
that's like kind of the fun of watching these movies again. Like how both of us were like, Saeed Joker doesn't really say "Dance with the Devil in the Pale Moonlight" that much. Like I thought that was just a thing he said throughout the movie. I also was convinced that Bruce Wayne knew that Joker killed his parents the whole movie.
Yeah.
Which also is just not true.
Correct.
Yeah, I mean, it was a good idea you had, like, that we revisit these movies and just kind of see how they hold up, but also we'll have a fresher memory of these movies because obviously we've missed some stuff or thought of stuff that's in there that isn't.
Yeah, or now see things from a different lens and perspective, according to our current global situation. The other thing too is that, like, the funny thing that shocked me the most was that I remember having, before watched Blade 2, distinctly remember this movie being my favorite Blade movie. And now I watch it, I was like, wait, why did I think that? There's so much that's not pulling me into this movie. I'm like, Blade 1 is definitely my favorite Blade movie of all time because that pulls you in, and it's like there's good stuff there, but it like ignores a lot of stuff too. Like that definitely. So the one thing I wanted to get your take on, because I know you're probably gonna have a lot this, because we talked a lot about this when we did the Blade episode, is him, like, this movie, do you feel like they purposely just kind of ignore all the him being black stuff? Like, is it like
there's no
it's even less interested in exploring that than the first one, because the first one at least touches on.
And I don't even think the first one even wanted to explore it. They just gave it lip service.
Yeah, that's exactly it. They were like, okay, we'll talk about this thing. Like, here it's just like literally there's no addressing
other than "Do you blush?" Like,
yes.
I feel like that is definitely a thing about him being black.
Right. And then,
but they don't really lean into it. They say it a couple of times, but then he says it back to them, which makes me feel like, wait, are they trying to just generalize? Like, I thought that for sure was a black thing.
Wait, versus what my impression was when they said, like, do you blush? I'm like, was that a vampire thing? Because in order to blush, you have to have blood flow come to the surface, and then you don't have blood flow coming, so you can't like that was my thing.
Maybe that I thought it was like saying like a black person can't blush.
Yeah, because like that scene where Reinhard and like Blade meet, that's a very uncomfortable scene. He calls him Adolf, he does all this kind of stuff. It's very, very, there's tension there, but it's never, you never get the sense that it's actually because of a racial thing. At least not to me, but this is why I was very interested in what you had to say. Like, do they hate him just because he's a daywalker and he's killed so many of their own people, which is what
I think there's room enough to
black
to safely assume that, like most things in life, sure, I'm sure, like, the black part probably doesn't help his case, but also they are at odds. Like, there's no way around that. Like, his whole thing is, I kill vampires. So if I were a vampire, I would be like, fuck that guy.
Yeah. And like, even the whole, like, me talking about the blushing thing being like it's a vampire blood flow thing, you're like, oh well, I like, and I could be like, yeah, I would legit think, like, is it like a joke against pigmentation? Like, can you see blushing with that coming, like, you know what I mean? But it's just one of those things where I'm like, this movie is even less interested.
I don't think that's a Guillermo del Toro thing. I think
I don't think so. I think it was more of a studio choice, maybe.
No, I'm saying I don't think Guillermo del Toro is interested in race as it pertains to black people. Like, I think he clumsily worked with black people in Shape of Water. Yeah, I don't know what, I don't know. He's got his own stuff to deal with, I'm sure. But yeah, I would. So I am saying the lack of that, I feel like, is due to Guillermo del Toro taking this over, and we already heard what his vision for this was.
Yeah, it was comic Japanese anime.
Yeah, so he's not really like looking for.
He legit just wanted to tell a story about Blade, and that was it.
Yeah,
and not a black hero, but just Blade. That was it.
And I think we're not going to see anything, improve in Blade 3. I keep saying that like we're doing it. We're not doing it, but
we're not doing Blade 3.
I doubt Blade 3 improves on that either.
It does not.
No. So
not that I can remember, but out of curiosity, like, now that we watched 1 and 2, I'm probably going to watch 3 just out of
the trilogy. I think, like, it's hard because yeah, if we're just talking about, is this a fun movie? Yeah, it's a fun movie. I think what was interesting about the first one was that like there was like an element of like this cool like, oh, like you don't know about this underground world, and like you're getting to see it for the first time. And there's like, even like he goes to like that black pharmacist, and like got the, again, I don't know, but like for me it felt like they had like their own secret like handshake, and like there was a recognition of like, you're a black guy, I'm a black guy, we're both like in this together, separate from other vampires. Like I like that there was some sort of hint to that, and that the villain in that movie did actually pick on him being a black person as well. I'm not saying I need them to repeat those tricks here. It's just they didn't really like dive into what looked like this other support system Blade had of black like people helping him.
Now, to you, is that worse, or like how is that? Because I was just one of those things where I'm like, when I watch like directors try to handle Asian race issues on film and all that kind of stuff, and if they don't do it properly, it's one of those things where I'm like, either do it well or don't do it at all. Like, I don't know if that's something that you share in this regard. It's just like, don't hint at something and then not actually explore it. Like, is that how you feel with Blade in this regard? Like,
no,
with the pharmacist?
I think I would say that unfortunately, like you would, like as an Asian Canadian person, like you would have less opportunity to see, even less opportunity than I do to see people that look like you on screen, like let alone portrayed properly.
But I disagree with that, though. And this is where like Asians have a lot
so
of.
No, don't get into like I have Asian cinema from China. I'm talking about
purely in the Hollywood sense.
Yes, this is what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
So anytime I bring that up, I'm well aware there is a whole country, a whole part of the world that has its own cinema. That's I always say that is something completely different that doesn't factor into this, because it all goes back to what we're talking about. White isn't the default. So for you to say that is to acknowledge, yeah, but I don't need it because I have Chinese cinema. It's like, yes, you have that. That is a part of you. That is important.
No,
but you live here.
No, I'm basically saying I'm recognizing the privilege that comes with me saying that.
Yeah. And so the idea is, if you live here now, you're not the only person who looks like you who lives here. That should be reflected on the TV you watch here, made where you live. And so for me, to answer your question of like, oh, do it right or don't do it at all, I think I've just been able to be numb to that and be like, it is what it is. Like, if that's the awkward approach they're going to take, I that's not going to be the element of whatever story this is that I like. I'm going to have to be like, well, it's like what happened during Green Book. When I was watching Green Book, I'm like, all the emotional stuff works pretty well. It is a highly offensive movie, but like the magic of that movie is that like you don't really feel how offensive it is while you're watching it. And I think that comes from the training of like being disappointed so many times as you grow up watching this stuff, that you're kind of like, well, yeah, I guess that's just how it is. Like, instead of being like, wait, no, why the hell is Viggo Mortensen the lead of this movie? That makes no sense. What, like, why is this or why is that? But as I said, the magic of that movie is that it hits the emotional parts to a point where most people who see it are like, that was nice. And maybe if you go into it knowing what is offensive about it, you'll see it and be upset. But I have people in my family who are very aware of that kind of stuff, that went and saw it and loved it. So yeah, what I would say is like,
what I'm getting to is the idea of like, even if we get something explored, we're not going to get explored well. It's just like beginning to talk about it and beginning to open up these things.
But that's, I mean, so this is why there needs to be
more
diversity,
absolutely.
like in front and behind the camera, like
absolutely,
so that the stories can be told properly. Or even if it is something like Modern Family, like that we started with, where it's like, well, maybe we counterbalance the tone deafness with this character that comes in, or this point of view that counterbalances the weirdness of how the family in general treats Lily.
Yes.
Because I don't know how many people of color are on that writing staff. I'm not even trying to imply that it's all white people. I'm just saying
we just simply don't know. Yeah.
Based on how certain characters get treated, I can't imagine that even if there are people of color in the writing room, that they have a true say in how this goes.
Yeah.
Just like and I'm a big believer in the medium as the message. So if Guillermo del Toro is doing a movie, I know that he's interested, like other than Pan's Labyrinth, and I'm sure he'll say that there's elements of Latinx like lore throughout it, and that's good. That's what he knows. That's what he will imbue his storytelling with. Pan's Labyrinth does seem to be specifically about a historical time, so there is all those elements and themes in there. But yeah, if he's doing a comic book movie, I'm fairly certain what he's going to be focusing on is the imagery of his childhood that he liked, the monster movies. That's what he likes. That's what he's going to deal with. He's not really, and I know he didn't write the script, but also he is a director that I get the sense gets a lot of control over what happens.
Yeah, because like even some of these the quotes here on the Wikipedia, they were just kind of like alluding to the idea of like it's Guillermo Toro. If you hire him, you get out of his way. He's a visual director. He has a strong sense of how he wants it to look, and you just get him. You're not going to tell him what to do. You just let him go with it, kind of deal, right?
And
from a visual standpoint. Yeah.
So I think that like if it was something like, oh, Spike Lee did Blade, and this was like, and Spike Lee did Blade 2, and this is what we got, I would then feel like, that's weird that they
I would feel very weird if Spike Lee did Blade 2 and this is what we got. I'd be like, what the hell? And you're willing to sign off on this? Like, that would be not
but okay. But again, he didn't, and we already know who did it. So it makes sense to me. And so what I can enjoy is the visuals, because that's kind of what Guillermo del Toro wanted me to do, is enjoy the visuals. So that's kind of where I'm at. Just like if I'm watching a Christopher Nolan movie, like I kind of know he's also a visual guy. He's not really what was the movie? Dunkirk. I was like, this is a Christopher Nolan movie. This is what he wants to do. Just cut out all the middle shit and like have it just be one long extended like action thing. This is what he wants. And like that's what we got. So there's not a lot of like character development. There's not a lot of that kind of stuff. It's just like boom, 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 and like you feel exhilarated when you go see it in the movie theater. And I'm talking about directors I like. I'm not trying to like beat up on anyone.
Yes, of course.
There's just there are the visual directors. There are the people who are more about like, and then there's people like Tarantino, where it's like, well, it's a lot of it. Yeah, there is a lot of visual violence, but it's also a lot of it is how people speak. That's what that's kind of what he cares about. So yeah, I think for me, this didn't bother me that they didn't really get into it, and it's kind of, as I said, it's why I'm happy we got Black Panther when we did, because I don't know that we would have got an in-depth thing on that platform. Like, I get that people go, the third act is stupid because of the CGI, but like, it's a movie that in the like domestically outgrossed the like the Avenger movie that came out that year. Like, I think it at one point beat Titanic again domestically, not worldwide. So there was a push there, obviously, if it's getting to be on that many screens for that many people to see it. So that's more what I mean, is that like to tell that story with the thought and care that was put into it, and then to be released the way it was pushed so hard. I don't know that would have happened before 2018.
Yeah, I agree with you on that. I don't think that would have happened because you still would have like studios being like saying stuff like, well, that's like from Blade One, well, that's black money, or from
Spawn, yeah,
Spawn,
yeah.
we were talking about that. Well, it's black money. Now it's just like, no, it's they're realizing it's so much more.
I mean, don't get me wrong. I'm not under any delusion that there was like I'm sure once they were like, we made people care about a raccoon in a tree, like we can do Black Panther. Like, I'm sure they also knew they had the like baseline of what like a Kevin Feige MCU movie can do.
Yeah.
They didn't do this being like, we're really taking a risk here.
Yeah,
I don't.
Yeah, at that point, it was not a risk. I cannot say
I'm sure
that it was
it
a
performed
big risk.
way better than they thought it would.
Yes,
because but I don't know that like Blade even gets a sequel if the mandate is like, let's really get into him as a black person.
Right.
I think that becomes like
you
a
mean
one-off.
in the current MCU?
No, I'm saying
or back
when it was made.
Oh yeah, I don't think that would have.
I think
taken
that's
off.
like,
I think that would have been too divisive.
Divisive.
To the audiences back then.
And I'm not happy about that. I don't think that's a good thing. But I'm also like,
I agree.
I'm also like, this is where we're at. This is where we're revisiting like what would have survived back then, and these two movies are what would like, this is the best case scenario.
Yeah, and
unfortunately,
and unfortunately too. Like the funny thing is, like from the Asian male standpoint too, I'm still getting something that's stereotyped. Going forward, like Shang-Chi is like, okay, it's exciting. I'm excited for Simu Liu and all that kind of stuff, but I'm like, I'm still dealing with the fact that I have to watch an Asian male do kung fu in order for him to have a lead in the movie. I'm still watching.
That is very disappointing.
Yeah,
I would say hopefully because there are more than just the same way of like Black Panther, because this should be focusing on Asian Americans obviously going to whatever tournament that they say is happening, but it will give a chance to give a spectrum, which I hope will be better.
Yeah, because it's meant to be. Yeah, it's meant to be like a Mortal Kombat style tournament, right? That he's fighting against.
And I don't even know that that's the whole movie. I just know that is like a part of it, right?
It's a big part of it, for sure.
Yeah. So
because if it was just that, I wouldn't be interested in it, because it would be like, hey, we're not addressing race at all again. And for the cast that they have, I'm like, you better be addressing race. And like I said, look, I find if they did an Asian American perspective with Simu Liu and Shang-Chi and all that kind of stuff, I think that'd be very, very interesting. But we'll see which direction they decide to go. Because if I see a trailer where like he starts off in China and all that kind of stuff, I part of me is going to cringe right away.
Mm-hmm.
It is. It's just going to cringe.
Fair enough. You have been pretty like good about expressing what your hesitancy is with that movie.
Yes.
I naively trust that like they're gonna put their best foot forward. I don't know. Like I like what's his name, Creston Daniel or something. I can't remember the director's name. I like the movies by him I've seen. He has done more movies than I've seen of his, but like I like Short Term 12. I really like Just Mercy. Both of them feel like they're a bit more soulful than just, oh, we got the Asian guy that can do kung fu. Like it seems like if they're getting him, there is going to be a soulfulness to it, like some kind of meditation on the like deeper themes. I'm hoping that's what they're going to allow him to do. Again, we saw Captain Marvel where they got the drama people and that kind of fell apart. But all I can do is hope.
Yeah, that's that. I mean, that's all I could do as well. And like, it's just all these concerns are because I haven't seen no one's ever has seen any kind of footage from them yet, right?
Yeah.
So the moment I start seeing footage is probably when I'll start to change my mind, change my tide. But those are the concerns that we're still going to get an stereotype thing, because it's very, very interesting right now what's happening. Because like you and me as people of color, we're just like, yeah, we're going to get something, but what are we going to get out of it? And then because when people are like, oh, you have Crazy Rich Asians, I'm like, don't talk to me about Crazy Rich Asians. Right. It's awful. Like, I don't like it. But people are like, you should have this, and look how well it did. And I'm like, look, I'm not saying, it's a weird thing because I'm like, oh, now that's what everyone thinks Asian culture is, and that's not the case. Because we have the one thing that was done.
And I would say that is because of what I was talking about earlier. That's what I was trying to get to earlier, is for you to be like, oh, it's fine because I have Chinese cinema. It's not fine. It's
right.
like there needs to be more example. It needs to get to that point where you see the spectrum.
Yeah.
So that like people can see a movie, like I'm gonna use black examples now, but like there can be a movie like Black Panther, but also a movie like If Beale Street Could Talk or Moonlight. There needs to be like a spectrum. It can't just be like, well, we got this one, we get one every 20 years that tries to do any type of deep dive into Asian American or Asian culture. It needs to be that there are more things produced because there are the people to go see it, and people like to go see things.
Yes.
I mean, yes, you can say Parasite did well, but that is under the international banner. That's under the foreign language banner.
Yeah.
And even if you see it, there are people that'll be like, it didn't feel foreign to me, but that is a very and you've spoken to it, like that's very specific stuff that is happening that might go over people's head. But there is the element of like telling, and I'm not saying do an American version of Parasite, which I think they are doing.
Oh God.
But what I'm saying is you can allow for a Crazy Rich Asians if it's not the one movie that came out in 20 years or the one, or if there's only the one Kim's Conveniences. They're like, there needs to be more stuff
exactly
that is put out.
And that's my biggest concern, is that we're like, well, you have this one thing and it should be enough, is kind of that rhetoric of what I hear when people are like, well, you have this. I'm like, but what the fuck? Like, look at all the shit that you got. Like,
exactly.
Look at all this.
Exactly. And that's what I'm saying, is that people shouldn't feel like it's the same rhetoric I know you're alluding to of like, yeah, but like,
you're lucky to have it kind of
Jamie Foxx won an Oscar, and it's like, but like, then we go like 5 years where nobody of color is nominated.
Yep. It's because it's kind of like, oh, you've met your quota. Let's calm you guys down for a little bit.
How many people of color do you think should be nominated, or how many? It's as many as there needs to be, because
as many as deserve it.
We're talking about the best of the best. We're not talking about the best white people, and then there's a couple of spots for everybody else. It's just what is the best, and
what is the best actor who that's.
And then when we're telling stories, there needs to be a space open for people to tell their story for Crazy Rich Asians, because you're right, that doesn't represent all of Asian culture. That represents someone's view of it.
Yes.
And then there needs to be different views.
Yes. Lots of stuff has to change for sure. But it gets down to like, and I don't know the numbers on this, but like, how many Asian directors are there? How many Asian filmmakers are there? It's that come from the North American setting, not from the Chinese film world, and have been given North American jobs.
One movie that I thought was, and again, I'm sure that would have been because it seemed foreign, even though I would say it was like a 60-40 split on English and Mandarin being used, but like that movie, The Farewell, with Awkwafina, where I was like, how did she not get nominated for Best Actor? Like, that's fucked up. Like, because you watch her in Ocean's 8 and then you watch her in The Farewell and you're like, oh, that's just a different actor. Like, she's doing a lot of great work. Or like, and that is an Asian female director, Lulu Wang. And like, her experience was like, I needed someone to translate the scenes into Mandarin. I don't know Mandarin. But like, that's interesting. Like, that is like a different perspective. That wasn't her being like, oh yeah, I know what I'm doing. It's like, I, as an Asian American, speak English. And then when I was trying to tell a story about my grandmother, I needed help with that. And like, this is the movie we get. And I love that movie.
The other thing I'm thinking about too is like, people are going to like, oh, but you're going to get Mulan. And the difficulty with Mulan is explaining, I'm like, okay, but this is a disrespectful movie because it's a real person. It's a real historical event. And then they're Disney-fying it up. So it's just like I'm just like, I've always had a problem with Mulan historically, from what Disney has done to it with Mushu, and now they're doing like this mystic, like like sorceress kind of angle. I'm like, oh god, no, and I hate it already without even seeing it. I hate it. So it's just one of those things where I'm like, yeah, because I know people are going to be like, well, what about Mulan? They're going to bring that up, and I'm like, it's going to be the worst thing for me to even talk about. And I'm like, this is not. It's an Asian. It's a movie about Asians told by white people. Is what I tell. Is what I say. And I'm like, and they're like, they just.
It is a white director for this again.
Yeah, it's true. And it's just not. It's not what I want.
But yeah, I think we have not talked about Blade 2. One thing I did want to talk about is the soundtrack. That is something I had before the movie because I don't I don't know what you would call the like mix, but it's like it's hip hop artists, and then like industrial artists or whatever you call that. So it's like Fatboy Slim and Eve from Rough Riders, or like Massive Attack and Most Def.
Gorillaz is on this too.
That was my favorite song, and it's not in the movie, and it pissed me off. Gorillaz on my mind. Gorillaz and Redman. That was my favorite song on the soundtrack.
Yeah, it's a sick song.
Jadakiss, Fabulous are on here with Danny Saber, like
Ice Cube.
Yeah, Busta Rhymes.
With the Roots.
Crystal Method and Bubba Sparks.
Yeah. So to me, this was a movie. The soundtrack was more interested in dealing with Blade's race than the movie actually was.
I would say the soundtrack was more interested in selling records because this was the peak. Like this was like any hip hop artist that comes out is going to go platinum.
Right.
This was like just around the time of like Eminem. Again, not a black person, but like even the fact that Bubba Sparks can be on here is it's like people are into hip hop. There's multiple white people doing it. I mean, sure, they do pay respect by having someone like Mos Def who's not commercial. Redman, who's not as commercial. He does the film stuff, but like Mystical is on there. Like it's a nice assortment of people, but I'm also well aware that like they were well aware of who was buying hip hop stuff then. It wasn't just black dollars.
No, right. That's absolutely right. It's a very interesting thing because like the setting that they wanted to put Blade in was very industrial, that kind of stuff, right? Rave scene, and that was traditionally associated more with white audiences and all that kind of stuff, which is why you have such a weird kind of soundtrack. But even then, like still being like, no, we're gonna push into the fact that he's black with the soundtrack and all that kind of stuff, which is interesting. It's really interesting.
It is a nice touch. I also know that it was made, I guess, similar to the Black Panther thing of like, we can do this because we know this will work out. The soundtrack will work out.
Yeah, the Black Panther soundtrack, and as well as the Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse soundtrack. Very good at dealing with this kind of stuff.
Yeah, it's hard for me now to like think of record sales because like everyone's streaming. Like there is no store to go out and actually have to physically buy things. So like, yes, you're right, but like I'm also like I don't even know like how to quantify that anymore. Like, because like you can't even, or maybe you can, but I feel like iTunes is like you can't buy.
Well, they say like digital.
Anymore.
I think one of the new stats is like digital downloads or something like that, or like how
right. But I don't know what that means for
money
to people, right? Like, I do know that there is like a secret number of streams or digital downloads that like equates to whatever dollar amount, but like yes,
and
Into the Spider-Verse soundtrack was I don't know what that is. No, I don't think so. I think it's just you got people to stream your stuff this many times, you get $1.
Okay. I didn't. Okay. That's I thought it was more along the lines of like you got X amount of people to stream this stuff. Now advertisers will start looking at your stuff.
I, as someone who has stuff on streaming, it is literally like you get 0.001 cents for every stream.
Oh, gotcha.
Yeah.
Cool.
And that's me as someone just putting something up. If you are say Eminem putting something out, it's definitely that is not the cut. You get a much bigger cut for
I'm sure,
whatever.
Gotcha.
But yeah. I did like the soundtrack. I did like that you were able to tie it into like, and this is kind of like the setting he's in, this industrial setting, with the fact that he is black.
Yeah, it's a weird soundtrack for that reason, but it actually makes a lot of sense for the movie.
Yeah, not all the
like, I've never
songs
seen,
work
you're
for
right.
me, but
Yeah.
like I enjoyed it overall.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. It's definitely very, very fitting for what Blade is and what the time was, because the thing is, like, the idea of like vampires being into raves and like that kind of stuff is not a big jump at all in the mind in the modern day.
Yeah, you're reminding me of that scene where he's like in the middle of people doing like the special dancing that you always see. I feel like there's always that meme of like people doing that exact type of dancing to like
the glow stick
the tank
stuff.
engine.
Yeah, the glow stick stuff. Like the 90s alt rave scene was like god awful place for dance. It was horrible. It was just movement. That's all it was. But it's still fun.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, I mean, yeah, people were having fun. Even Blade, by letting people know he still will shoot them.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think that's Blade 2. An interesting moments that don't really, I don't know, like, other than the one concrete thing of me being like, I don't really care about that end fight. I don't even know what they could have done differently to make it better. I just know that it didn't really come together the way the first Blade does, and that might just be like the first Blade is different. It's like if I think we're doing the chronologically right, like it's like it's only the second time there was like a black male or a black comic book lead, so that means something. And then I guess you just ease into the fun of the second one. It is Wesley Snipes' favorite Blade movie.
Yeah.
I get
Why
that.
does he prefer this one over the first one? It seems like
this one over the first one?
Yeah.
I would imagine it's more his experience on it. I bet he was treated really nicely.
It seems like he was given a little bit more freedom and like with everything.
Maybe.
Because of the fact that Goyer and Del Toro was like, no, he knows Blade. So just let
him I don't know if Goyer was saying that, but there were people that saying it.
Right. I think Goyer was saying it. I'm not too sure. Oh, no, wait. That was a Del Toro quote. Sorry.
Yeah. Del Toro definitely did. And then the other producer I mentioned, Peter something, but like, I don't know how well Goyer and Wesley Snipes got along.
Fair enough. And that stuff I will have no idea of whatsoever.
Yeah, I don't have any insight. I just know that obviously it didn't work out when Goyer became the director.
And that
there wasn't enough distance at that point.
Yeah, it's funny to me that they actually wanted to introduce Hannibal King into this one.
Oh, they wanted to?
Yeah. Well, this is apparently what they wrote here. Like originally, they wanted to bring him in for this one.
I feel like I have to watch 3. I've only ever seen it once, but I know Hannibal King is a character. I just don't really like. Is he always a good guy? I don't get what his.
I'm not too sure, but like, so
I'll watch it. I'll figure it out.
Apparently, they were after the first film. New Line and Marvel made plans for a sequel in '99, saying that it was going to introduce Hannibal King and Frank Drake, as well as a time travel storyline where Blade goes years into the future.
I'm glad they didn't do that.
I'm pretty happy they didn't do that either.
I don't think the idea is to like give him sidekicks. I think the idea is like, I'm happy with the way this turns out. Like, you think he's on a team, but he as the character is the whole time is like, I know they're trying to screw me over. I even know Scott's trying to screw me over. I'm not worried about that.
Yeah.
I like that. He's a lone wolf type character. It's just it is fun to see him bounce off of other people, but like, yeah, I don't need him to like have a team, like a set team that goes out with him. And like, that's just what's gonna happen. I like that it's just him for the most part.
Yeah. I'm glad they went this direction, even though it was as fumbly as it was, as opposed to trying to bring the Hannibal King and Frank Drake characters in.
Yeah. Well, also I don't particularly feel that time travel. Don't get me wrong. There are examples of times where I like time travel, but I don't know what the time travel would add to this sequel.
Yeah. I just don't.
Especially going forward. Like, that always seems like, okay, I guess.
Yeah, like
Different to us as an audience that he goes into the future.
Yeah, I just like what.
Unless you just want to completely remove him from the setting and aesthetic that we already know and like.
I think that would probably be the reason why, but I don't know. I don't know what they were thinking with that, but that seems like it would be a mess. A side time travel storyline. I'm like, I feel like any time time travel is in the story, it has to be the main element.
Yeah, I would agree.
Because if you try to do a side story, like time story, everything's like, wait, you have to, because they have to establish the rules of time travel within that universe in order for it to work. You can't be like, oh, he time traveled. It's like, wait, what? You can't do that in a superhero movie. I'm like, you could probably do that in another kind of movie. Like, what's that movie where they were writing letters to each other in that cabin or something like that? With
Spoiler alert. I don't
something
think it's
like
called
that.
The Lake House.
Yeah.
I feel like there's a Harry Potter movie where they can do light time travel, can't they?
Yes.
That's
and
like
that
how
bothered,
Hermione's like getting away with a bunch of stuff.
Yeah, Hermione. That was like, I think, the fourth one where Hermione was given like this little thing from Dumbledore that allowed her to study more by stopping time.
She could get more done because she's just doing time travel.
It pissed me off because I'm like, you mean that device never comes back ever again? Even though it's like one of the most useful things in the world. Like, why would you not use it again in your fight against Dumbledore and all that kind of stuff? Like, that bothered me about that. But like, man, it was, to be fair, that was meant to be a kid's film book as opposed to a comic book where the audience is.
No, I only have read the first book. I was only basing this off the movies.
Oh yeah. It's, I don't know. It's definitely worth a good read. I like them. I like the books a lot more than the movies. Good.
That makes sense. Yeah. That makes a lot of sense. I just chose not to read the books. I was like, nope, not for me. And obviously they're great. People love them. I don't know. That's not my point. I was just like, this doesn't work for me. And I assume they get better as they go along.
They do.
Excellent. Well, let's rate Blade 2 now that we've talked about everything.
All right. So Blade 2, with everything we've talked about, I think I'm giving this a soft 5.5.
Wow.
Yeah.
This is the biggest disparity we've done so far, I feel like.
I think
maybe
so.
Not actually. I don't. No, because you really didn't like Superman 2. It's interesting how similar these two movies are. These two episodes have been. I would still give this like a 7. I'm not that mad at it. I just don't really. It just didn't wow me.
That's exactly it. It didn't connect for me. It was just one of those films. Like if I was to put Transformers on, I'm like, yeah, I don't connect with this movie at all. I was like, it's fun. I enjoy it. Visually, it's cool, but I don't connect with this movie at all. That's where the 5.5 and comes in.
Well, I still connect with all the Reinhardt and Blade stuff. So
yeah. Well, absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah, for sure. All right, cool.
Excellent. Well, we did it. We rated it. We talked about it. We talked about Harry Potter. We talked about a bunch of stuff. Oh, boy, you got a real special episode this time. All right.
We do.
If you like this, please remember, we're on the That Shelf Podcast Network. That means you should go to thatshelf.com, hit up our podcast section where you'll see bad gay movies, black hole films, changing reels, composers, No Budget Nightmares. What a great theme song. And some other great stuff. So please go there. And if you want to see older episodes of Spoiled Rotten, please go to tdfeverything.com/spoiledrotten. You'll also be able to contact us on Twitter at tdfspoiled. Our email is spoiledpodcast@gmail.com. And we're also on social media, but you'll have to go to the links I've already told you about to find out how to get in touch with us that way. Also, we're on most podcatchers: Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Stitcher, Spotify, iHeartRadio, Radio Public. So go there, rate, review, subscribe, and share with your friends. Thank you very much. You have anything else to say, Ben?
Nope, that's pretty much it. Stay safe, stay healthy, and we'll see you around.
Bye-bye.
This has been a TDF Everything production, brah.